10 American sedans that look completely ordinary. No aggressive bodywork. No exotic badges. Just the kind of four-door cars you'd expect to see parked outside an office building. Built for nothing more than getting people where they needed to go. But one of these 10 was different. It was quick enough to run with Corvette-powered V8s and even supercharged sedans. And the strange part? You'd never know it by looking at it. Park this car outside an office building, and a few seconds later, you might not even remember it was there. Then a car magazine put it against a stopwatch. The result? Hidden inside this ordinary-looking sedan was enough performance to run with cars carrying bigger engines and much more famous performance credentials. So how did the 1990s, a decade known for horsepower, big V8s, and superchargers, produce a sleeper like this? Which car was it? What was hiding under its hood? And just how fast did it really run in that magazine test? We'll answer those questions one by one. Because these 10 cars aren't just a story about speed. They're examples of an era when performance didn't always announce itself with a big spoiler, a loud exhaust, or an aggressive badge. Sometimes, the fastest car on the road was the one that looked the most ordinary. And when we reach number 1, you'll finally see just how fast that ordinary-looking sedan really was. Number 10. Standing on a showroom floor in 1999, the Chrysler 300M didn't look like anything special. It looked like just another ordinary midsize Chrysler, with an unfamiliar badge on the front. But that badge carried a much bigger history. Back in the 1950s and 60s, Chrysler used the 300-letter series name for some of its biggest and most expensive performance cars. Then, for nearly an entire generation, the name disappeared. So bringing that legendary 300 name back on a front-wheel drive, four-door sedan was a pretty big gamble. But the 300M wasn't simply borrowing an old name. It was built on Chrysler's cab-forward LH platform. The wheels were pushed closer to the corners of the car, while the cabin was moved forward, creating an interior that felt much more spacious than you'd expect from a typical midsize sedan. And then came the real surprise. Under the hood was a 3.5-liter SOC V6, producing 253 horsepower and 255 pound-feet of torque. Power went through a 4-speed auto-stick transmission. The clever part was that the driver could shift the gears manually without needing a clutch pedal. And that's when this ordinary-looking sedan showed what it could really do. In Motor Trend's testing, the Chrysler 300M reached 60 miles per hour in just 7.7 seconds. For an ordinary-looking, front-wheel drive sedan in 1999, that was anything but slow. In fact, the driver of a Ford Taurus in the next lane had plenty of reason not to take this Chrysler lightly. But the 300M wasn't trying to recreate the old letter series cars with brute force and a roaring engine. It was trying to bring back something else, the sense that an ordinary sedan could still feel special. And in that respect, the 300M didn't just borrow an old name. It gave that name some of its dignity back. Number 9. By the mid-1990s, the Ford Contour was the kind of car companies bought by the thousands for their fleets. Tidy, practical, and distinctly European in character. It was exactly the sort of four-door sedan nobody would give a second look. Then Ford's Special Vehicle Team, or SVT, got its hands on one. And that's where the story changed. SVT took the Contour's 2.5-liter Duratec V6 and turned it into something much more serious. They improved the intake ports, fitted specially ground camshafts, added a larger throttle body, a lighter flywheel, and a freer-flowing exhaust. The result was 195 horsepower and 165 pound-feet of torque, sent exclusively through a 5-speed manual transmission. No automatic, no shortcuts. Then the stopwatch showed what this ordinary-looking sedan could really do. In Motor Trend's testing, the SVT Contour reached 60 miles per hour in just 7.5 seconds. It covered the quarter mile in 15.7 seconds at 88.7 miles per hour. For a front-wheel drive sedan from the 1990s that still looked like something you'd find in a company parking lot, that was seriously quick. But SVT didn't stop with the engine. The Contour also received revised suspension tuning, upgraded brakes, and 16-inch Goodyear Eagle GSC performance tires. In other words, the chassis wasn't built simply to be quick in a straight line. It was set up to make the car fast, stable, and controlled when the road started to twist. Car and Driver put the SVT Contour into a best-handling car comparison under $30,000 in 1997, alongside cars like the BMW 3 Series. Mazda Miata, Camaro Z28, and several other performance machines. The SVT Contour didn't win that test. It finished fifth. But its agile handling, responsive steering, and engaging character clearly caught the testers' attention. And that was the strange thing about the SVT Contour. Ford had taken an ordinary commuter sedan and given it the engine, transmission, suspension, brakes, and tires to turn it into a genuine sports sedan. From the outside, it was still just another company car. But underneath the hood, Ford had given it something no fleet manager was ever expecting. Number 8. Back in 1996, you could walk up to an airport rental counter, ask for a Ford Taurus, and walk away with an SHO without ever realizing what you had. From the outside, there was almost nothing to give it away. It looked like an ordinary Taurus, a comfortable, four-door family sedan built for everyday use. By the mid-90s, many buyers figured the Taurus SHO had lost its edge. The earlier manual transmission V6 was gone, and the new SHO seemed to have traded some of that raw character for comfort, refinement, and an automatic transmission. But Ford still had a surprise waiting. For this generation, Ford worked with Yamaha on a completely different power plant, a 3.4-liter, 32-valve V8, mounted transversely under the hood. It was the first V8 ever fitted to a Taurus. The production engine was rated at 235 horsepower and 230 pound-feet of torque. And unlike the earlier SHO, there was no manual transmission this time. Every one came with a 4-speed automatic. On paper, an automatic-only V8 in a family sedan sounded like a strange combination. Then the stopwatch came out. Car and Driver's test recorded 0 to 60 miles per hour in 8.0 seconds. The quarter mile took 16.2 seconds at 86 miles per hour, while top speed reached 136 miles per hour. That wasn't sports car acceleration, but for a large, comfortable family sedan that looked almost anonymous from the outside, it was still respectable pace. And the real story was sitting under the hood. A Ford and Yamaha 32-valve V8, mounted sideways in the engine bay of a mainstream sedan, inside a car most people would never mistake for serious performance machinery. That was the appeal of the third-generation SHO. It didn't need a huge spoiler, a loud exhaust, or aggressive bodywork to make its presence known. From the outside, it was just a Taurus. Under the hood, it had a V8 that had no business being in an ordinary family sedan. Number 7. Pull into a country club parking lot in 1996, and the Pontiac Bonneville looked exactly like what it was sold as, a big, comfortable, top-of-the-line American sedan. The kind of car you bought for quiet highway miles, a soft ride, and plenty of interior space. Then there was the SSEi. From the outside, it still looked like an ordinary Bonneville. But underneath that familiar body was something much more serious. GM's proven 3.8-liter 3,800 V6 was fitted with an Eaton M90 supercharger, producing 240 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. And all that power was sent to the front wheels. Then Car and Driver put it against the stopwatch. The result? 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 7.5 seconds. For a nearly 3,800-pound front-wheel drive sedan in 1996, that was plenty quick. Quick enough that the driver sitting beside you at a stoplight had no reason to take this quiet-looking Bonneville lightly. But the SSEi wasn't just about the supercharged engine. The 1996 model could be equipped with a heads-up display, projecting driving information directly onto the windshield, technology you normally expected to find in a much more expensive European luxury sedan at the time. It also offered traction control and a full digital trip computer. For a Pontiac Bonneville in 1996, that was a serious technology package. Comfortable, powerful, and carrying far more performance and technology than its conservative appearance suggested. The SSEi was Pontiac's own sleeper formula, quiet on the outside, but a completely different story under the hood. And remember, this isn't a beauty contest. Every car on this list is ranked by one number, and one number only, 0 to 60. Number 6. Drive past a retirement community in the mid-90s. And the Buick Roadmaster probably wouldn't have earned a second glance. It was a return to the old American formula, a full-size, rear-wheel drive sedan with body-on-frame construction, massive dimensions, and absolutely nothing sporty about its appearance. But Buick put a V8 under the hood with a pedigree from an entirely different world. The Roadmaster's 5.7-liter LT1 V8 came from the same engine family as the V8 used in the Chevrolet Corvette, detuned somewhat for sedan duty. It still produced 260 horsepower and roughly 330 pound-feet of torque. That power went through a 4-speed automatic transmission to a solid rear axle, with an optional limited-slip differential available. Some sources claim the Roadmaster could reach 0.60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds. But we're not using an estimate. We're using a real magazine test. In Car and Driver's Period test, the Roadmaster went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.8 seconds. So for our ranking, we're going with the 7.8-second tested figure. And remember, this car stretched more than 17 feet long and weighed well over 2 tons. Yet it could still reach 60 in 7.8 seconds. Buick didn't stop there, either. With the available heavy-duty towing package, buyers got more robust cooling and shorter gearing, giving this genteel American cruiser towing capability that many luxury sedans of the era simply couldn't match. And that's what made the Roadmaster so interesting. From the outside, it was just an old-school American cruiser. Under the hood, it carried a V8 from the same engine family as the Corvette. And before we move on, remember one thing. The fastest car on this entire list isn't a V8. It's still ahead of us. And it's nothing like what you're expecting. Number 5. In 1997, the Buick Regal arrived with a complete redesign. From the outside, it looked like another conservative GM sedan, built for comfort, refinement, and everyday driving. There was nothing about its appearance that suggested performance. But Buick had something else in mind for the top trim. Under the hood of the Regal GS was the L6730-800 Series 2V6, fitted with an Eaton 90 supercharger. It produced 240 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, with all that power going to the front wheels. Then came the part that mattered, performance. In Motor Trend's 1997 road test, the Regal GS went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 6.6 seconds. The same test covered the quarter mile in 15.0 seconds at 92.3 miles per hour. For a quiet, front-wheel drive Buick sedan, that was serious performance. But the most interesting part was that the car gave you almost no visual warning. Park a Regal GS outside a suburban office building beside a row of company cars, and there was very little to make it stand out. No big hood scoop, no racing stripes, no aggressive bodywork. It looked like the most harmless car in the parking lot. But press the accelerator, and that impression changed in a hurry. On the outside, it was an ordinary Buick. Under the hood, it had a 240 horsepower supercharged V6. And that was the real charm of the Regal GS, a quiet, unassuming Buick with performance that was far more serious than its appearance suggested. Number 4. The Grand Prix name has been part of Pontiac's history since 1962. But when the Grand Prix GTP arrived on a new W-body platform for 1997, it was a much more aggressive machine. Sharp body lines, a low stance, and prominent fog lamps made it clear from a distance that Pontiac wanted this car to get noticed. But the more interesting story was under the hood. The GTP carried the L67 supercharged 3800 Series 2V6, the same engine family used in the Buick Regal GS. One spot behind it on our list. GM was more than happy in those days to spread a proven performance engine across several models. Output was 240 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. That power went through a heavy-duty 4T65 E4-speed automatic. And mounted on the center console was a performance shift button that made the transmission hold gears longer and use more aggressive shift points when you were asking for everything it had. Then came the stopwatch. In Car and Driver's Period test, the Grand Prix GTP went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.8 seconds. It covered the quarter mile in 15.2 seconds at 93 miles per hour. And in a period test by Motor Trend, the GTP was even quicker, recording 6.6 seconds to 60 and 15.0 seconds through the quarter mile. The exact number varied slightly with the magazine and testing conditions, but the message was clear. The GTP was a genuinely quick mainstream American performance car. Pontiac leaned into that performance image in its marketing as well, associating the GTP with NASCAR pace car duty. And unlike many cars on this list, it wasn't limited to one body style. The GTP was available as both a coupe and a sedan. Whichever body you chose, there was the same unmistakable whine of that supercharged 3,800 under the hood. Now, let's do a quick gut check. Which car has surprised you the most so far? And which one do you think the next car is about to beat? Because from here on, every car gets quicker, and the surprises are about to get a whole lot bigger. Number 3. The full-size Chevrolet Caprice had a reputation as your grandfather's car: big, rounded, upright, and about as sporty as a family sedan could get. Then Chevrolet changed the formula. Built on that same Caprice platform, the Impala SS received one of the most deliberate visual transformations on this list. Chevrolet stripped away the chrome, blacked out the exterior trim, fitted 17-inch 5-spoke wheels, and added a rear spoiler with a lower, more aggressive stance. But the real story was under the hood. Chevrolet dropped in a 5.7-liter LT1 V8 from the same basic engine family as the Corvette's LT1, modified for sedan duty. It still produced 260 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. That power went through a 4-speed automatic transmission to the rear wheels. Then Car and Driver put it against the stopwatch. The 4,221-pound Impala SS went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 6.5 seconds. It also covered the quarter mile in 15.0 seconds at 92 miles per hour. For a full-size, 4-door sedan weighing more than 4,200 pounds, that was serious performance. And that's what made the Impala SS so special. On a workday, it was just like any other big family sedan. Plenty of room for 4 adults and enough space for the groceries. But on a Saturday night, sitting beside another car at a stoplight, the story could be very different. From the outside, it was a blacked-out Caprice. But underneath that ordinary family sedan shape was a Corvette-related LT1 V8. And now we're down to the final 3. From here on, every car gets faster, and number 1 is about to completely change what you expect from an ordinary-looking American sedan. Number 2. By the mid-1990s, most buyers wouldn't have thought to put a BMW 540i and a Cadillac Seville STS in the same conversation. The BMW was an established name among European sports sedans. The Seville, meanwhile, was an American luxury sedan, quiet, formal, and built with comfort in mind. But that was exactly what the STS was designed to challenge. Under that formal, understated body sat Cadillac's 4.6-liter Northstar V8. It produced 300 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, with all that power going to the front wheels. Then Motor Trend put it against the stopwatch. In its March 1996 test, the Seville STS went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 6.4 seconds. It covered the quarter mile in 14.7 seconds at 96.9 miles per hour. For a large, front-wheel drive American luxury sedan, that was serious speed. Even against performance-oriented cars like the Ford Mustang GT of the same era, the STS was not something you could afford to take lightly in a straight line. And comparing it with the BMW 540, I suddenly didn't seem so ridiculous either. The Cadillac may not have been as sharp through the corners as the BMW, but in straight-line performance, it was close enough to make the comparison worthwhile. And that was the real trick of the STS. No spoiler, no racing stripes, no hood scoop, just a formal American luxury sedan. One you could look at and never guess that a 300-horsepower Northstar V8 was waiting underneath the hood. Put your foot down, and it didn't put on some dramatic show. It gathered speed like a good elevator moves between floors, smooth, quiet, and so effortless that you might not realize how fast you were moving until you looked at the speedometer. And now there's only number 1 left. We've seen some serious sleepers so far, but the final car is about to challenge everything you thought you knew about an ordinary-looking American sedan. Number 1. Remember that ordinary-looking sedan we talked about at the very beginning? Here it is. During the 1980s, Chrysler built a strong reputation for turbocharged performance. Shelby-badged Daytonas, Lotus-engineered 16-valve cylinder heads, and high-performance engines hidden beneath surprisingly ordinary bodywork. By the early 1990s, that engineering hadn't disappeared. It had simply found its way into a car nobody would have looked at twice. The Dodge Spirit RT looked completely ordinary, a square-shouldered, K-cart-arrived 4-door sedan, the kind of car a neighbor could drive to the office every morning, then park alongside every other ordinary company car in the lot. But underneath that unassuming sheet metal, Chrysler's engineers had built something completely different. Under the hood sat a 2.2-liter turbocharged and intercooled four-cylinder, fitted with a Lotus-designed 16-valve DOHC cylinder head. It produced 224 horsepower and 217 pound-feet of torque. In 1991, those were astonishing numbers for an ordinary family sedan. Those were performance car numbers. And all that power went to the front wheels through a heavy-duty 5-speed manual transmission, the only transmission offered in the RT. Then Car and Driver put it against the stopwatch. And this is where the entire list changes. In Car and Driver's 1991 period test, the Dodge Spirit RT went from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds. In that same comparison, it beat the Ford Taurus SHO by 0.8 seconds to 60. And its 14.5-second quarter mile at 97 miles per hour was equally impressive. Among the period magazine results we verified for this list, 5.8 seconds was the fastest 0 to 60 figure. And remember what we're talking about here. This wasn't a V8 powered muscle sedan. It wasn't a rear-wheel drive sports car. It was a front-wheel drive family sedan with a 2.2-liter four-cylinder. And that little engine delivered acceleration strong enough to run with machinery costing far more. Period sources also described the Spirit RT as the fastest American sedan of its time. Chrysler knew exactly what it had built. Period advertising called the Spirit RT the fastest sedan made in America. And its top speed? Period sources put it at around 141 miles per hour. But this car didn't stay on the market for long. The Dodge Spirit RT was sold for just 2 model years, 1991 and 1992. Only 1,399 were sold in the United States over those 2 years. In 1991, it was available only in red or white. Then, in 1992, silver was added, with only 31 examples produced in that color. 2 model years. Then it quietly disappeared. And that's the biggest irony of this entire list. 10 cars. 10 ordinary-looking sedans. From the outside, most looked like cars you could park outside an office building on a Tuesday morning and never get a second glance. But the stopwatch told a very different story. The fastest car wasn't a V8. It wasn't a supercharged 6 either. It was an ordinary-looking Dodge Spirit RT, with a turbocharged 2.2-liter four-cylinder that could take it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds. It looked like nothing more than a family sedan. But when it came to performance, it could run with much more serious machinery. And that's what made the sleepers of the 1990s so special. Did anyone in your family ever own one of these quiet performers? The Bonneville Roadmaster, Regal, Impala SS, or Spirit RT? Tell us which one, and whether it ever surprised somebody at a red light. And if you enjoy this kind of ranking, the fastest American coupes of the same decade might be next.